On this channel, we often talk so much about black and white art, penciled art, preliminary art, all the sort of process stuff that goes into a final printed comic. So it's surprising that we've never actually looked at Batman Black and White. Batman Black and White is a collection of short stories from comic artists all across the comic spectrum, ranging from alternative comic people to mainstream people, all telling their version of a short Batman story. It was a really cool concept, and I think it lasted for maybe 3 or 4 volumes. The one I have here is volume 3. I would say my favorite one is probably volume 1. I currently don't have a copy of volume 1 anymore, but maybe I'll get one for future videos. But it's just really cool to see great comic book artists and visual storytellers depict a story, whether it's Batman or not, but do it in a way that's in full black and white. Having that restriction of no color, especially in a DC mainstream comic, I think it inspires a lot of creative outcomes. One of the short stories that stood out to me in this particular collection is one by Alan Davis and Mark Farmer. We talked about Alan Davis in a somewhat recent video. We looked at his Fantastic Four penciled work, and I was so blown away and impressed and inspired by that stuff. It's sort of led me down a little bit more of an Alan Davis rabbit hole. And I wasn't familiar or aware that he had done a Batman Black and White short story. So in this video, I just wanted to look at that short story and just kind of dive into it and look at it from an artistic perspective and just get inspired and juiced up by it. There's a chance that even if you're a Alan Davis fan, you might not have seen this short story. Like I said, there's so many of these Batman short stories that have been collected over the years in Batman Black and White that I think some of them have kind of gotten lost in the shuffle a little bit. So if you're an Alan Davis fan and you love Mark Farmer inks on top of Alan Davis, that's sort of like a classic comic book duo right there, this video might be for you. So take a look and enjoy. What is it about black and white art that is so pleasing to the eye? It's something that I ask myself a lot, especially when I'm looking at comic book art and particularly original comic book art. The cool thing about this Batman Black and White collection is that it's all in black and white. And for me, I might be biased because I'm a maker of comics and I like to pencil and ink and do all that kind of stuff. But I think comic art really shines when it's in its natural form, black and white. Of course, coloring is a huge part of comics and there's incredible colorists out there. But at its core, I think anyone can make black and white comics without having to have a knowledge of color or computer software or fancy paints and markers. You need paper, you need ink, you need pencil, and a couple pens, a couple brushes, and that's it. Anyone can do this. The hard part is doing it on a really high level, like this particular short story right here. I'm going to zoom in over here so we could get a little bit of a closer look. And as we go through this very short story drawn by Alan Davis and inked by Mark Farmer, I'm going to keep sort of asking myself that question, like what makes this art, these lines that are put down on white paper and create this illusion of space and texture and environment, what makes that so appealing? I think some of it is the preciseness of knowing just where the black areas go and where to keep the white of the paper showing through. For instance, he's working with a light source right here. There's a lamp there. It's being covered by that word bubble. But just the fact that he decided to completely, either Alan Davis himself or Mark Farmer, either one of them decided that it would be better just to completely black out that hand right there. That's the part of his arm and the part of his hand that is against that light source. There's many different ways of rendering that and lighting that, but that bold move to just sort of completely black it out, that just makes it really pop. That's like a very pleasing thing to the eye. It also really helps set this scene in a particular environment and place and mood as well. On this previous page here, there's this opening scene where a lot of stuff is going straight to black, full black, partially silhouetted figures. I think that's a really bold move, and I really love when artists do that, and I try to incorporate that in my own work as well. And then where you're able to sort of interrupt those fully blacked out pieces of an image with just the right amount of white, and where you choose to leave the white of the paper is really like a compositional decision. The white of this street over here leading to the background elements, the vertical nature of this panel where you read it from top to bottom, all that clever placement of black and white helps lead the eye and tell the story that much better. And then making decisions on where you use finer lines, like hatching lines or cross-hatching lines. What part of the page and the panel do you sort of save for that kind of inking versus the more bolder, fuller black areas? Here's a silhouetted area right there. These are all really like decisions that are made by both the penciler and the inker. I would love to see the pencils for this particular story and then compare them to the inks, because it looks like there was a lot of decisions being made here. I think probably knowing that this was going to be printed in black and white, perhaps Alan Davis and Mark Farmer approached this a little bit differently than some of their other comic work that they know is eventually going to have color on it and have even maybe some like special effects on top of it. I've said this before in a previous Alan Davis video, but there's just a real patience to his art. Him and Mark Farmer together seem to have a very slow and controlled way of going about drawing this stuff. You can see just the hairlines in this guy's beard right here and in her hair back here. Those are really very intentional lines that aren't rushed or kinetically put down. And it's done in a really consistent way. I think that has to almost be within your personality to an extent, to be able to ink and draw these kinds of very delicate, intentional lines that are very time consuming in the end, and do that on a regular basis, consistently. I don't think that's in everybody's temperament. And hence, that's why we get different styles. There's, you could look at Alan Davis's work here, and then you could look at like Jordi Bernay, for instance, which is a lot more gestural, fluid, expressive, kinetic. The way they put down the lines and probably even the way they look like posturally when they're sitting at their desks, all that stuff is probably very, very different. And then, of course, the outcome turns out very differently. One is not better than the other. It's just a matter of, I guess, style at the end of the day. And style kind of comes from within and then, comes out through your hand. Our style, in a lot of ways, is, an amalgam of all of our influences that we've taken in. But I do also think that it has to do with just the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. And if you're a slow, methodical, controlled person, perhaps your style will reflect that. And if you're more of a improvisational, kinetic thinker, maybe your style will reflect that. But regardless, Alan Davis and Mark Farmer certainly have carved out a very distinctive style, certainly in comic books. And it's great that we get to see it in all its glory in black and white in this little short story. I wish it was longer so that I could just see more of this art. But like I said, I think they were pulling out all the stops in this one particular short story just because knowing that this is going to be printed in black and white, they could kind of showcase a little bit more of what they do best, which is just a beautiful blending of delicate lines and bold lines and creating black and white art that is just really, really pleasing and inviting to look at. I'm just going to go back to this earlier page here. I mean, look at Batman's cape right here and the lighting as well. There's such beautiful feathering lines. There's a blending of some cross-hatching and hatching. There's an effect here that I'm not quite sure what that would be. That might be like some sort of like scribble gradient with a pen. Perhaps it's like a China marker, you know, some sort of like charcoal marker that just using it as a gradient. Some of that effect is over here as well. I'm leaning more towards the fact that that's probably just like a scribble effect. And that's something that I haven't really seen much of, not in Mark Farmer and Alan Davis's work. That's a cool effect that I might sort of steal that and bring it into something that I'm working on. I guess if I had any criticism or complaint about this little short story here, it's that some of these, headlines here and some of the other just titles of papers and things like that weren't done just by hand. Some of this typeface stands out a little bit too much just because the artwork is so beautifully done, to have that like just very standard kind of typeface on top of it. I wish it was a little bit more integrated in the art. But it's a short story that you might not have seen before. And if you're an Alan Davis fan, I hope you got a little bit more of an up-close look at it. And perhaps it inspires you as much as it's inspired me to look at. All right, I hope you dug that little look at some of Alan Davis and Mark Farmer's work on a short little Batman black and white story. I think we all wish that was a little bit longer, but we'll take what we could get. Like I mentioned, I would really love to see the pencils for that short story and just compare them to the inks, just to see who was making what decision, if all of that was laid out in the pencils or if Mark Farmer kind of asserted his own point of view and inking skills on some of those little decisions there by like blacking things out completely. That's the kind of technical stuff that really interests me, and I think some of you as well. So if you'd like to see me go through some more of the short stories in here or some of the previous Batman black and white volumes, let me know in the comments below. I'd love to see more of these things and share them with you, dissect them a little bit. Let me know if that's something you want to see. Also, if you have a favorite Batman black and white short story, let me know which one that is. For me, the one that always kind of comes to mind is the Bruce Timm short story that's in the first volume. So anyway, that's all I got for this video. I hope you enjoyed this quick little look at a Alan Davis and Mark Farmer Batman black and white short story. If you liked the video, please do hit that like button. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, please also subscribe to the channel. And if you would like to get a little bit more in-depth material and process stuff and whatever else I'm not sharing on other platforms, consider following me, joining me over on Patreon. So if you're interested in diving a little bit deeper and also helping support the channel and my own comic and illustration endeavors, please do consider joining the Patreon. I definitely very much appreciate it. Anyway, thanks for watching this video. I'll catch you in the next one. Take care.